Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Sacred Para today. It's Saturday. I'm having the live a little bit early, but I'm being joined by a local celebrity, guys. Yes. We have our very own Ed Inkwell Fonza, who will be joining us today. He has an upcoming movie, and so I'm going to talk to him today about storyline content and character development and how that plays into the big screen. So I'm really excited to be able to deliver this particular IG live show, because I believe that it's going to teach and show each and every one of us how our hobby can become so much more, possibly still using our dolls. Now, he does not use the dolls, but I believe that it's always good to hear insights about storyline content and how it relates to anyone who uses characters and dialogue and just playing off of that. Hello, how are you, Melco Jojo? Thank you so much for joining today. So I'm excited about today's live. I do want to give all kinds of honor and accolades and credits to my husband and my sons for setting this all up. I appreciate them so much. I want to thank my girls for getting my co-hosts together, Gloria, as well as Minnie Sheeta. So I am very appreciative for all of what they do in order to get this all together. So I thank you guys for joining. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and call him in right now. All right, I'm going to write his name. There we go. I'm going to send out that go live. So I hope you guys are having an awesome Saturday. Of course, this is right after Thanksgiving, so happy belated Thanksgiving. I'm hoping everyone had an awesome and outstanding Thanksgiving and that you're still able to celebrate even though it's Saturday and tomorrow's Sunday. I know a lot of people were able to get off of work and school was off. So you guys are hopefully still spending some family time together. Hi, Coach Play. That's my husband. As you guys know, I say it often. He's a personal trainer. And alongside of also being a personal trainer, he is able to give encouragement and help people develop in their own personal character. There you go. While having fun. So I did send a request. Let's see if I can resend it again. There we go. It should go through. So we're just waiting for the request to go through. I'm sending it in. Sometimes IG Live can be a little tricky. So let's see here. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you? It's good to see you again, Rashid.
It's been a long time. How's everything going?
Everything's going all right. Have you been okay?
Been doing good.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's so good to see you again.
You too. It's been a while. I think the last time, and I put it in the description and the caption for today's live, I said how we had met through the restaurant, met your mom, and being able to, have you guys embrace us and let us do our open mics there, because we were comedians at the time, and we still do our comedy, but now it's a little different. But I really do. I thank you guys so much. Like, that blessed us to just be able to, meet you guys and have you guys in our life and doing our open mics there. But being able to talk about storyline, was that already something that you were doing? Were you already writing stories and we just didn't know?
I've been, the current story that I've been directing, I've been trying to come up with something for years. This kind of just fell into my lap over quarantine. I wanted to write something that encapsulated my feelings and everything like that. But I've been trying to develop something for a while, and it just took a while to get that through. There have been a lot of stories that I've shelved because I just couldn't find a way to make it work. While something was interesting to me, it might not be interesting to a lot of people. So I had to find something that, while it can sustain that philosophy and psychology, that core element, that base, I wanted it to also be something that was entertaining. So it took a while to really figure out what I wanted to do exactly. But yeah, I mean, I've been writing for years, and this is something that just kind of fell into my lap. The way the world was at the time, what was going on, and my those claustrophobic feelings in quarantine. That really just took hold in this current thing that we're actually filming and everything.
Okay, okay. I like that. Now I know one of the interesting points about you, I'm because we all have so many different dimensions of ourselves. So I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, I know you through and through. But one of the things that I really do enjoy about your posts that you put out with Facebook, you always have different points of views about movies.
Right.
And I always enjoy being able to like hear what you write. I don't know if you write them still, but you were giving out your different reviews about movies and just really awesome detailed understanding. Did that play into how you're writing your current film?
Yeah. So it's kind of slowed down a bit because I've been so busy with this film. I love talking about different movies that have influenced me, current movies as well. I just love having, different points of views of movies. I haven't been able to see as many movies as I used to because of, the sudden transition with the film and everything. But yeah, it really played into it. When this movie comes out, there are a lot of heavy influences. There's a lot of Hitchcock influence in
Oh,
there.
Hitchcock.
Yeah. Vertigo and Psycho were two of the biggest influences on this film. Uh, the way these characters talk, his girl Friday was a big influence. Yeah, there were many influences on old Hollywood, a little bit of transition into that new Hollywood, but oh, absolutely.
Now, for anyone who's watching this or you watch this on replay, the film that you're talking about is Roach Motel,
Yes,
right? So anyone,
right,
if you're watching this, you watch this on replay, definitely go check out this profile so you can be able to get, some understanding
right.
about the film. Can you share with us a little bit of a trailer about it or, what it's about?
Yeah, so what it's about the people who are affected by a world of fear mongering, which I hit on the world a bit in Modern Living and You, which that was a very late edition, but I'm so glad I did it because it was a way to test out what we want from the film, how technical wise and narrative wise, we wanted to showcase how we want to play with the aesthetic and sound and with this film, I want it to sound and look not cheap of today's standards, but cheap from the time period that it's shot in, that 60s, 70s, 50s aesthetic, and I want it to look that way and sound that way. I think with a lot of independent guerrilla films, not Hollywood independent, but more of that real kind of independent film. That sound is always something that takes a back seat with these kind of films. A lot of these young directors don't really understand that sound is very important. And when you turn on a movie, the first things that you notice are the sound and the film quality. And so that was one thing I always wanted to be in the front seat was the sound quality. So yeah, with Modern Living, we were setting up the world around these characters that this is a world of fear mongering, and where we have this, we have a sort of a PSA, one of those 1950s PSAs, which this short film was heavily influenced by those Goofy shorts from the 1950s and the 1940s, where there was this omnipotent, chaotic narrator who would cut and piece together the story as he liked, as he would fit. And it's as if he would get this joy in Goofy's pain. And I found that very interesting, and I wanted to play into that a little bit. And so, Modern Living is the world. And it's, going into Roach Motel, there was a lot of things that I had to clear up. While this is the 1950s, or sort of the 1950s, 1960s, there's a lot of inconsistency that suggests maybe it's not the 1950s. One thing that's noted is the 1970s aesthetic. And the burner phone is another thing. And the burner phone's just a MacGuffin that I can't really remove from the film because it's so important. So what we did was we used Modern Living to kind of explain the world that these characters are living in. We have this burner phone. What is it? Nobody really knows, but people accept it. It's just there. So that way, when going into Roach Motel, people don't really question it as much. It's just kind of there. And so Modern Living is the world, and Roach Motel is about the people that are living in it. We don't really explore the world in Roach Motel. Roach Motel is more about what fear-mongering can create. And it can create people, like you will see with the Monroes, people who are afraid but can't really vocalize it. They're the Shakespearean couple, very, very conservative, very tragic, and we reflect them back with characters like Wolfgang and Priscilla. Wolfgang is a character that I'm going to be portraying, and I'm slowly getting into the role. In the words of Stacey Ferguson, I'm working on my fitness. But yeah, we've got a great cast, and with Modern Living, we had Jeremy and Cindy, and they were wonderful in it. We had for the Inkwell crew, we had Michael, we had Brian, we had Dave, and with Roach Motel, it's something that I am very excited about because we've got a very fun cast with Cameron, with Patty. We have our lead, Afton, and she's wonderful. And I'm very excited for you all to see her in this, as well as everyone else. Patty and Cameron, they're wonderful in the roles. We have Lacey helping out with the choreography. Yeah, the crew, they're all great, and they've been very helpful with the crew, with getting this film into production. And yeah.
What genre would you say that this movie it fits in? Is this a horror movie? Is this a drama? Is it a rom-com? Is it a comedy?
I would say it's a dark comedy. There is a lot of suspense to it, but it is more satirical than it is suspense. There's a lot of satirization in this as well.
Okay. Now, prior to writing this, because you wrote this, correct? You're writing and
Yeah.
directing. So
Yeah.
prior to that, had you had any previous writing background? Did you graduate with an MFA, or what was it that you had background wise?
So I didn't really have much background writing. I had taken a journalism in high school, and that had really helped with my love of movies, helped me explore more of my love of movies. But, I think when writing something, there's got to be that drive. And you could go to school and have that drive, but if that drive's not there, I just don't think taking classes on it will truly help you get that drive. You just really have to, it's something that you've got to be truly passionate about.
I
And
agree.
it takes
Absolutely.
work. It takes a lot of work. There are a lot of things that not everything that you write is going to be great. It takes work to really build that up and truly explore what you want your voice to be and how you want to speak to people.
I agree. I fully agree with you. And one of the things that this show provides for all of our listeners and viewers is an understanding that you can have like zero background in writing and still get it done. Just like you said, you have to have that drive, because you can have all kinds of degrees and certificates saying that you're a writer, but if you don't have that passion and that drive, and you're not able to, sometimes put a script on the side and not, initiate it because it wasn't maybe like your best, and you're not going to be able to do it. You have to have the
Right.
passion, you have to have the drive, but also know that you don't have to have the certificates and degrees in order to say you're a writer. So I'm glad
Right.
that you brought that up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of people out there who have that drive, but it's their voices just aren't heard, and that is a tragedy. There are so many wonderful writers out there that
Yes.
just yeah, it takes a while for your voice to truly be heard. So yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree with all of that.
And sometimes you just really have to take that chance on yourself, being willing
Oh
to
yeah.
put the gamble on yourself to get it done. And so I congratulate you on, pushing forth and being like, I'm going to make this script into a film, and I'm going to get the actors and get, everything together to be able to, make this work into something greater than myself. And congratulations too on being featured in the Leo.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that's it takes a lot of work, even if you're just a really good writer. It does take a lot of work to advertise yourself as well. It's something that you have to constantly be on with that kind of stuff. A lot of voices go unheard because there isn't that there's not really a platform for them to speak on, because the unfortunate truth is there aren't a lot of people who are going to go out there and look for you. You truly just have to put yourself out there, and if you don't put yourself out there, it's the chances of someone just coming up to you and saying, "Hey, I really think you could have a lot of talent if you would just work for us," or something like that, becomes unlikely. So putting yourself out there is something that is very important. Finding different and affordable ways to advertise yourself, because not everyone has the money to get billboards and everything. I don't have the money to get billboards for myself. So it's finding that budget. It's finding different and ways that you can afford to advertise yourself. That is very important because you can show up in people's feeds. People can see you. People will reach out to you. It's just finding a way out there. That's the difficult part. Is yeah, it's easy to write something, but it's difficult to get yourself out there.
That's so very true. And I'm glad once again that you brought that up, because in our dog community, a lot of us are introverts, myself included. And so I believe that one of the challenges that so many people face is getting out of your shell, allowing
Right.
yourself to be uncomfortable, advertising yourself, giving yourself a pat on the back, and really recognizing that what you wrote is worth it. And I'm glad that you did bring it up, because sometimes we do, like I said, myself included, we do kind of look for someone to say, that's great work. Let me, push you. Let me sponsor you. Let me put you on, with these other, writers, and you guys can be co-writers. We look for someone else to validate what we have. And I see tons of awesome storylines on my feed constantly, from people that I've already spoken to and had IG lives with, to people that I haven't spoken to, or people who even said no to me. They're like, I really don't do IG live. Nonetheless, awesome storylines, and people who even have like really great followers more than mine. And I'm like, how is it that their stuff is not on TV yet or in a movie yet? And sometimes that's because it's, I'm too shy. But you're so right. If you're looking to get out there and maybe even still use your dogs, you can do it. It's just going to be stepping outside of yourself. So I'm very glad that you said that.
Yeah, it's you gotta truly just take that chance, because there unfortunately aren't a lot of people who are gonna come after you and reach out to you. So you have to reach out to other people. And I think a lot of it just comes down to asking questions and talking to people. Because the worst thing they can do is either not respond or say no. So I would say asking questions and reaching out to people is very important in this kind of world. There are a lot of people who aren't going to understand what you're putting out there and what you're writing. So, I don't think if someone doesn't understand it or doesn't like it, I don't think you should take that personally, because people are going to have certain opinions, and not everyone's going to like what you put out there. And you just, it's, and finding your voice truly takes a while. Another important thing is character, because your story is only as good as your characters, and finding those likable characters are very, very important. I don't think a character has to be, that being said, I don't think a character has to be likable to be a good character. There are plenty of unlikable characters that are still very good. I would say Great Gatsby is a good example of that, because none of the characters are truly likable with their accents, but they are good and well-written characters. I think finding that having a charismatic character can also be very important. Having a character that fits the visual aesthetic that you're going for in the film. With Modern Living, going back to that, what I wanted is a character design that was easy to draw, something that was simplistic. This is a character. Margie's a character with a lot of depth, but she is forced to be this caricature of a simple modern housewife. This film suggests that there's only black and white. There is no gray area. This is modern living, and everything else is in the past. So she has to visually represent what the narrator is trying to convey. So she wears those polka dots, something that's simplistic, something that shows simpler times, and just the title itself, Modern Living, is something that I found very simplistic. I had picked that title and that exclamation mark. The exclamation mark, I was very excited about because I think it's so silly when films put an exclamation mark at the end of their title. It's as if they're screaming the title at you. And I wanted to add something as like that to suggest, yeah, this movie isn't truly taking itself seriously. I don't really like it when movies add symbols to their titles, but anyway, with going back to
We all have our
characters.
own pet peeves. We do.
Yeah. Going back to characters, yeah, I think having this character visually represent what what the story is trying to convey, or their own belief system. We see that a lot with Roach Motel, how these characters are dressed. We use a lot of color. We use a lot of designs. I would say, Wolfgang and Priscilla, they have a certain look about them. They have a certain way they dress. Wolfgang has this loud and brash kind of outfit, signifying he's a loud and brash individual. Priscilla wears this calm, cool, and collected kind of outfit, showing that she is a collected and smart individual. But we also play with colors too: red, green, purple, yellow, and it's what it comes down to is uh,
Do the colors
you.
kind of signify the personality of the character?
Yes, yes. Throughout film, colors have been a tool that you could use to signify the scene, the character, anything like that. Colors weigh heavy with symbolism. Red can represent many things. It can represent violence. It can represent love, lust, anything like that. Purple, of course, represents royalty. There are so many so many different ways you can represent color in film, and
When
people
you
have
say
been
red,
using
it
it
makes
for
me think
years.
about Schindler's List. And we have a movie that was
Yeah,
done basically in black and white, but then you have this little
right.
girl with a red coat. And
Yeah,
you follow her all the way till she gets to the bedroom, and I think that she goes underneath the bed. It's been some time since I've seen it. You're thinking that she's gonna, make it throughout that movie, but of course she doesn't, unfortunately. But that
yeah,
red pop of color catches your eye in the
right.
midst of such chaos and such, tragedy and sadness. And then, almost gives you a sense of hope. Like, I'm watching her and I'm hoping that she makes it through this situation.
Exactly.
So you're so very right when you say that, using those pops of colors or whatever colors, hers was a pop of color, but whatever colors that you use in your storyline can signify so much to your audience.
Yeah. Yeah, in a black and white movie such as that, color can also represent importance. Because when a movie's black and white, your eyes kind of direct to color in that scene. So that red coat, it really signifies the importance of this character, and which, yeah, that can trick us a bit as well, showing that this character could survive. But she ends up not surviving. And we see the importance of that on the effect of Schindler himself. So
Yes.
yeah, I believe that color can have a heavy importance in film.
It does. It does. And you said something that really does stick home with me and hopefully with anyone who's watching this or who watches this on replay or saves it. One of the things that really does stick out to me was when you said that the character is wearing something that is significant of the 1950s, especially with housewives. So using the wardrobe as a tool to signify a mindset of character, I think is an awesome concept.
Oh
And
yeah.
I wrote that down. I was like, oh, that's a really good way of being able to talk to your audience and give your audience a kind of like a full spill almost of where this character is at mentally,
Right.
without even having to draw it out. Like you don't have to spend 15 minutes or so saying where this character is at mentally. But for us who are aware and we're watching it and we see her clothes, it's like, isn't that a little outdated? And so it takes us back to leave it to Beaver, or something of
Right.
that era when women were more docile and they wore this and, kind of did whatever the husband said and whatever their, thoughts and dreams weren't really as important because it was the movement of the household that had to go forward. So I like that you're using, like we said, the colors as a tool and using the wardrobe as a tool to convey what's going on with the personality, the overture of your character.
Oh yeah, I think the design of a character can be very important because it can signify whether a character is going to be memorable or important
Mm.
to the story or not. Uh, it truly represents who this character is, what this character is about. It can say a lot about a character, how the character is seen by other people versus how the character sees themselves.
Ooh,
Uh,
that's a good one.
oh yeah, it's with Roach Motel, we see a lot of that with these characters, how they're dressed, how it signifies themselves, and how how others see them. With Roach Motel and Modern Living, that's the biggest thing is how a character is seen versus how they see the world. Because objectification is something we're playing with in this, the big philosophy of, we're constantly being objectified and we are objectifying others, and we can't truly stop objectifying others, and we cannot stop being objectified. That's just the world following Sartre's philosophy, Jean-Paul Sartre. Yeah, and we play a lot more with that in Roach Motel versus Modern Living. But yeah, Modern Living was just a tease of what we're going to play around with more. I remember when I was talking about Modern Living, someone had asked me why communism, and that goes back to when I first started writing Roach Motel back in quarantine because I didn't want to make it a film about 2020 or 2021, but I couldn't really afford a period piece. So I wanted to make a film that Roach Motel is more of a film that takes place in a time out of time. This is very
Mm.
alternative. It's not quite clear what timeline this takes place in. No one really mentions the year. No one mentions anything about that. Although what kind of staples down that 50s, 60s period is that the world around these characters, that looming threat, the so-called looming threat is communism. But the true looming threat of the world is this act, the McCarran Act. And we hit a lot on that, which is something that actually happened and is a part of history. And so we do play around with the McCarran Act, the tribunal. There's a lot of that. But as for why communism, the story itself, Modern Living, Roach Motel, it's not really about communism, but about, like I said before, fear-mongering and what fear-mongering can do to people. What kind of people fear-mongering can create.
I like that. I like that. So we talk on here about research, and that especially if we do time period, it's so important to research. Did you have to spend a lot of time studying on that particular time period when we talk about communism and what was going on and how it affected the citizens? Did you have to spend a whole lot of time learning about that?
Oh, absolutely. I spent, before writing this and during, and a lot after, I spent a lot of that time researching, communism, the time period of the 50s and the 60s. I spent a lot of time research. Even for Modern Living, I spent a lot of time researching the PSAs of the time, so it feels very authentic. That authenticity, that can be very important in stuff like this, even if you're just creating this alternative type of timeline. You still need that ground. There needs to be something that grounds these characters. You truly need to set up the world before setting up the characters in the world. A lot of science fiction, when reading a lot of science fiction, it can be cautionary, and a lot of it does have to do with the world that the authors are living in. Something like German Expressionism, if you watch a lot of German Expressionism, it is very critical of fascism of the time. Metropolis was something that's very critical. And what they do, they don't outright say that this is a problem. One of the reasons is because they can't really outright say that this is the problem.
Yes.
Because that can get them exiled or killed. But another thing is, story-wise, it gives more to a story when a character is facing this problem that seems kind of outlandish and fantastical. But it can also warn us about our own problems. It can parallel to that. So it is good to do your research when going into something like this, because that is extremely important. Even though I love philosophy and I know a lot about Sartre's philosophy, when writing this, I studied a lot about objectification and his other philosophies. I wanted to show these characters' psyches, so I studied a lot about body language and how so I can truly convey what these characters are feeling without outright saying what they're feeling, because these characters are so thick-headed, they're not going to outright say what they're feeling. So you have to convey that in subtle ways where they can say, hey, well, their body conveys how they're feeling rather than what they vocalize.
And see, we run through that with our dolls. First off, I should ask you, were you already familiar with the doll and Barbie community prior to us talking?
So I was not. I did I did see a lot of your stuff on Instagram, and I did look around. So yeah, I was not familiar with the doll and Barbie community. I had I didn't know it was as big as it was either.
Yeah, it is. It's quite big. It's quite big. And that's
Yeah.
just with the adult collectors. So
So yeah, you had opened up a new world to me. This is my first experience in the in this community.
I don't mind. I'm excited about it. I'm always excited whenever someone's like, this is my first live. This is my first time knowing about dogs. I'm like, yes. Actually, my girls, now I've always been a Barbie girl since I was very young. And then I eventually put them down when I was about 15 and just kind of hid them in a box. And then our older girls came to daddy and was like, we want to start making doll clothes. And they asked me, previously, and I hadn't been able to do it, just didn't have the time. And when they went to him, I was like, okay, let me go ahead and do this. And, we had the whole thing with the pandemic. Everything was shut down. Things that we had planned and different, because I'm an indie author, so I had different book signings that I had planned, and we were trying to get the kids involved with fairs and stuff. It just didn't happen. So I was like, let me just go ahead, start making these doll clothes with them. And then we started doing storyline, and we started posting it on my regular or on my, personal IG page, and just putting in that hashtag Barbie, saw all the different people involved in the community. And so we used this page that I wasn't using, the Sacred Para, to start posting the stories. And then it got really good to me and very therapeutic for me. And so I ended up taking over, but they still help me. But yeah, it is so liberating to be able to be involved with it. But we do storylines. A lot of different people do. Some people use their dolls for fashion. Some people are taking, random posts or outdoor posts. Some people use their dolls, especially their mini-me's, as a personal journal. So like if they went shopping that day, their doll goes with them and they're taking a picture of what they bought, and their doll has like the miniaturized ones. So many just awesome creative people that I have met and just seen in the doll community. It's amazing, especially when you talk about what's going on outside of you and you turn on the news or just step outside and it's so chaotic. Being able to be a part of a different universe that really does take your mind off of the restlessness and the drama outside of you it's been reassuring. So going back to what you were saying though about body gestures and being able to, kind of get into the psyche of your character, that's something that we have to deal with constantly because we're not able to depict everything language-wise with our dolls. So the way that you're able to position them, and these are made-to-move dolls, so they have more articulation than what your average dolls do. So being able to kind of like show them more in like a resting position to, just to be able to describe what she's feeling is better. If her hands goes over her head, maybe she's feeling kind of sad right then. So you're expressing your character through your dolls, and you're not able to always spend that time to give like a backstory. So their body language is so important for what we do, and we have to exaggerate it even to be able to really show our audience what we're saying.
Right. Yeah. And I would say with the dolls, there's not much facial movement either. So you would have to truly be very liberal about that, about how to show these dolls in if a doll was in emotional distress or something, you would have to physically show that. Oh yeah, exactly.
It comes from like camera angles, being able to have the angle of the camera in such a way where maybe you're only showing the eyes, especially if you have a doll that's smiling and they're supposed to be, emotionally distressed or distraught. How do I do that? So you really have to get more creative in how you're doing it, as far as like, like I said, with the camera angle, just showing the eyes, having the hand over the mouth, being able to, even possibly have them look away from the individual, which would kind of show like, I don't want to deal with you right now, or I'm going through a personal suffrage that I don't feel like expressing right then. So, I mean, when it comes to being able to have your dolls express it without using a face app, you have to get very creative with it.
Right, right. Yeah, and like it's funny that you were talking about communities because there are a lot of Instagram communities that, when I first started posting those movie reviews, I had no idea that there were so many uh, communities within that movie review side of Instagram. So it's nice that there is a community that for something that you're very passionate about, like the dolls. It's nice that there is that accepting community where you
Yeah,
can just talk to people who also share these hobbies and everything like that. It's wonderful to have a community that's very accepting. Like, yeah,
I agree. I fully agree. Because we all, we all have something of interest that we want to do. It's just, once again, like you said earlier, stepping outside of yourself, advertising yourself, allowing yourself to post your storylines with your dolls, or if you don't have a storyline with dolls, but you still have a story inside of you, putting that story out there, publishing it, and just seeing where
right.
things go. Yeah,
Yeah, and like I said earlier, while there's always going to be those people who don't like the stuff that you put out there. That's a given. There are going to be people who don't like it. There are going to be people who don't understand it, but there also are going to be a lot of people that do like it and who people who share those same interests, and they're gonna like your stuff. While there aren't going to be so many people who can share those interests, I think it's good to look at the fact that there are going to be people who enjoy what you put out. Not every idea is going to be great. Not every idea you put out is going to be great. But there are going to be good ideas that you put out. And
I
there are going to
agree.
be people who embrace it.
And sometimes you can't even be the judge of if it's going to be a good one. Because I remember I
Oh,
wrote a play, Cloud Watching. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to put it out there. It's not one of my favorite. It's not one of my favorite plays that I've written at all. At all. And I
oh
remember
yeah.
when I wrote it, my playwriting professor loved it. She thought it was one of the best. Years later, I published it and had some actors, actually play the roles, and always receive positive reviews. Anytime that play is written or produced or someone reads it, I always get positive reviews. It is not one of my
Right.
favorites. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
not. I can't explain why, but it's just not.
Yeah. I in high school there was this film festival that I was a part of, and I had put out this film, and I'd been working on it for the entire year, but it was, a lot of things had gotten in the way, and it had we had like a week to finish it, and there were a lot of things that I wasn't happy with about that film, and I still, to this day, I don't like it. I had my film festival teacher remove it from YouTube, so that's just something I hope doesn't see the light of day. And yeah, there are going to be a lot of things
Yeah,
that you put out that you yourself aren't going to like. But yeah, absolutely.
I fully agree with you. Where do you get your storylines from?
So I very influenced by a lot of old Hollywood and even outside of Hollywood. When first writing this, I had talked about the exploitation look, and that's something that I had settled on in the very beginning. Is I want this to feel like an exploitation movie and to look like an exploitation movie. So with Roach Motel, I was very influenced by old Hollywood, uh, Hitchcock, and exploitation. A lot of French cinema as well. The way it was written and the way we're shooting it is very influenced by French cinema. But as for exploitation, with exploitation is something that I find very interesting because it did not receive the love like it does now. It receives a lot of love now. And Hollywood itself will come out and say, yes, we've always have had a love for exploitation. And that is not the case. A lot of exploitation movies were not shown in theaters. They were shown in drive-in theaters because they were considered trash. But the thing is, exploitation, it had something that Hollywood did not. They can speak on controversial topics, and they can truly just speak on whatever they like because they weren't a part of Hollywood.
That's true.
They had the freedom to move around in certain stews and certain waters, but they just did not have the budget. In Hollywood would not advertise this, so they had to go about different ways of advertising this. They would use these bold exclamations, and they would do a whole bunch of they would advertise in a whole bunch of ways. I would say one of the most famous bold exclamations that they made was to avoid fainting, keep repeating, it's only a movie. They would have re-releases of the same movies. And if you've noticed something about Roach Motel, it goes by two different titles. It goes by The Honeymoon Suite, and it goes by Roach Motel. And there is a reason for that. Exploitation movies would often go by many different titles. And the reason is usually because there was a hot and there was a cold version. There was a version that you would sell to the audience, and then there was a version you would sell to, say, the FCC or to Hollywood. And
kind of like what we call the director's cut.
Yeah. And then the other reason is because if these movies didn't do too well, they would take them out of the drive-in, they would shelve it for a few years, and then they'd bring it back, repurpose it as an entirely different movie. A good example of this was I Spit on Your Grave, which originally came out in '78 as The Day of the Woman, but then came back as I Spit on Your Grave in '81. There were a lot of movies that would do this because they didn't make enough profit, so they would repurpose themselves as completely different movies.
I think when you say this with the exploitation of that particular genre, I think about the black exploitation movies of the 60s and the 70s. Well, I would not kind of skirt on the 50s, but definitely 60s and 70s, where I think Mario Van Peebles' dad was pretty much a leader in that. And Black Adam, I know he did recently pass, but he did so much work in that particular genre to bring it up to the forefront. So when you talk about the movies that Hollywood wouldn't pick up, there were so many movies that were just considered as black exploitation movies that were very good, detailed storylines, excellent actors, but you're very, very correct in saying that it spoke about things that really, well, one, we were dealing with racism, of course, but then two, we were dealing with storylines that no one wanted to really hear about, the political aspect of things. A whole system that no one wanted to have be, publicized. So yeah,
Right.
I'm definitely vibing with you on that.
I think with what you had brought up with Mario Van Peebles' father and black exploitation, Pam Grier is just truly
Oh,
one of my favorite actresses, and Coffee and Foxy Brown are some of my favorite movies. And
yes,
there are pros and cons to exploitation. Big con is within the name itself, exploitation, which a lot of those movies can be very exploitative,
yes,
um, where of whatever genre they are trying to do. But the pro is that they could go into certain controversial topics that, say, Hollywood could not go into.
yes,
There are a lot of movies that dabble into racism in Hollywood, but they do it in a way where they don't want to make uh, people feel bad. Like I would say something like The Help or Driving Miss
yes,
Daisy, where they don't want to make certain white people feel bad, so they'll have the big racist, the one that's like, he's so racist, of course everyone hates him. But exploitation, they'll go into things like subtle racism that's very problematic, that Hollywood itself just will not talk about. So
yes,
I think the thing is that exploitation, while there is a con that it can be very exploitative, going back to I Spit on Your Grave, I do not think that was the best title for a rape revenge movie. Um, but I think what it comes down to is when exploitation uh, is good, it can be really good, and it can get into the meat of the problem that Hollywood is just still to this day too afraid to get into. And that was one thing, that was one of the things that truly influenced me to take up that exploitation style. That I want to get into stuff that a lot of people aren't going to talk about. I don't want to just talk of, I don't want to create this conservative caricature like Governor Monroe and just have us laugh at him because he's this buffoon. I do want to create a truly tragic character that, he has lived this life on this platform, and that's all he knows is this platform. Once that platform is taken away from him, he doesn't know what to do. He is completely lost. He is the Shakespearean, this tragic character that he doesn't know what's underneath his own mask. And then you have the tragedy of Beverly Monroe, where she doesn't even have the platform that Governor Monroe has. She lives on his platform. Once that's taken away, what does she have? I would say one thing that influenced Beverly Monroe's character, there were a lot of different people who have helped me truly, who have read the script and have helped me create certain things about this character. They have given me certain insights about a character lifestyle. I've had people talk to me from the viewpoint of the conservative woman, because I don't know anything about the conservative woman. I don't know. That was my biggest problem with writing the Monroes. I don't really know the conservative lifestyle very much. So I don't want to create this conservative caricature. I want to create these tragic characters that live on this certain platform that they can't escape from. Beverly Monroe, one of the biggest influences on her character is this quote by Stacey Dash that just boggles my mind, because you can take this many ways, and any way you take it is just, it's fascinating. It's such a fascinating quote, where if you don't know Stacey Dash, she was the actress from Clueless. She was Alicia Silverstone's friend, and she became really big in the conservative world. She was on Trump's team for a while. And then Trump kind of used her and tossed her to the side. Trump and his team just used her, tossed her to the side, got everything they needed out of her. And she realized this. And she had said something about this, that it's such a fascinating point of view, where she said, she admits that she was wrong. She was like, I'm sorry. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that apology that really got me stirring around with this idea. It was what she said at the end of her apology, which was, I want to be invited back to the barbecue. And I think that's so interesting, because that,
I know what that means.
So it kind of makes me wonder, is she truly sorry for what she did, or is she just lonely? She's got all the money she needs. Does she just want her friends back? Or is it like, oh, now I've got all my money, now you all can come back? So that kind of makes me think, is this a sincere apology? But the answer is, we will never know.
True.
So that's what I wanted to create with a character like Beverly Monroe, where it's like, I want to know what's going on in this character's head. I want the audience to see I want them to think what's going on in their head, because the true answer is, we will never know. It's up for the audience to decide. I don't even know what's going on in her head.
Isn't that so true?
Huh?
I said, isn't that so true? Because you don't really, you're the voice of the character, but really your characters are the ones that's moving your play or your storyline along. And you cannot and you should not manipulate that. You should let their voice come out the way that it needs to.
Yeah. My directing style, when talking to the actors about their characters, I want them to have a clear idea of what this character is about. If they think this character is sincere, if they think this character is insincere, do not tell me. Keep that in your head, but play it out as such. Kind of like, if you think this character is insincere, play with that. Use your body language to truly play with that idea.
Yes.
And yeah, so I mean, it all comes down to that, really.
Now, that is one of the key advantages, and I will put this out there, that is one of the key advantages of being able to use your human people as characters versus, our inanimate dolls, because you can get the input from people and their perspective of the character, and that will really transcend that character to another level that maybe you as a writer and a director didn't even see until they acted out. And then you're like, wow, that was a nice perspective, because they put themselves into it, or their understanding of the character. So that is something that I do kind of miss with working with humans that you don't always get with the dolls. And every once in a while you may get those happy accidents, as we call it, when the doll does something, their hand is placed in a certain area and you take a photograph and you're like, oh, wow, okay, that gave me a whole different perspective of that character and how to write it out. But it's not the same like being able to communicate to a human and get their perspectives. Now, with so many different things that you've said, that I completely gel with. Anyone who's ever watched any of my lives knows how much I love William Shakespeare. You said it like a few times. I don't know if you noticed. I smile every time. I'm like, yes, William. I don't know if I knew him before or what, but like William Shakespeare and I, we have like quite a connection. My husband knows about it. I'm like, you know what? So glad we worked during that same time span and same era. Yes, I really do. I like William Shakespeare. Just a phenomenal guy who went beyond what people expected. You know, very controversial. You know, famous but controversial in the same hand. Like there's so many different, you know, things about him literarily wise and, you know, who he was. I think at one time they were going to shut down the theater that he was at, and he literally moved his theater as if it was part of the play. And so no one knew that they were moving the theater from one location to the next. So they took it like piece by piece and made it seem like a play. Just very creative. But my favorite play of all is Othello. And I love it because of the character Iago. We don't see him evolve. He never really, you know, he doesn't get better. He doesn't become a better person. What he said in the very beginning in his soliloquy of how he was going to be is how he stayed. It got worse. But without an Iago and the power of that character, you wouldn't see it move. So you had said about the movement of the story not always being from, you know, this protagonist or like the best character. And you gave an example with the Great Gatsby. And so I thought about Iago and how he moves Othello along. But he, of course, is not an ideal character. He's pretty horrible. Right. But yet he moves it along. And then I listened to you with your descriptions of the Monroes, with the Governor Monroe and Beverly Monroe. And what I see so much is an identity crisis. And it relates to us as humans, to where you can identify yourself as one way. In fact, my husband and I, we just recently had a conversation about this. You identify with yourself as one way, right? And then something happens in your life that kind of just pulls the rug from under you. And now you have to like realize, who am I?
Yeah.
So I like how you bring up that aspect, because I think it brings up such great self-reflection for us as an audience.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the biggest misconception in storytelling is that a character has to develop. I think having character development is very important, but character development is different from a developed character. I think
Oh, say that again. That was so good. Character development is different than a developed character. That was like volumes right there. That was good. Write it down.
I think if you have a character who is stagnant and refuses to develop, you have to write the story around that, and that is very important, is to writing a story around a stagnant character who has this refusal to develop. And that's what we have here in Roach Motel, are characters that just refuse to develop. And as soon the story moves around this character. So these characters, with their refusal to develop, are stuck in this world that is constantly changing. And the thing is, you could argue that a big problem with with these lifestyles of these characters who are in this stagnant form is that this world taught them to be like that, and yet continues to change. Their own society is changing around them, when their society is what formed these characters. So to have a stagnant character, you do have to show the problems within that world, within their own world that they live in. Or if this isn't a lead character, you know, either way, I would say there has to be some kind of narrative-wise, you do have to show that there is a big problem with that lifestyle because we, as humans, we are constantly moving, constantly evolving. And so development is necessary. It is
Yes.
very important. So to have a character who is in this arrested development, you
Mm, that's a good
have
one.
to show that that isn't where you need to be. Otherwise, your story has mixed messages in there. That no, it's not important to develop. This character is right. That can be that can be reckless, a little reckless storytelling because it can give the audience the wrong idea. A character can either develop, stay stagnant, or can become underdeveloped. They can
Mm,
lose control. They can their life starts to deteriorate around them, and that can lead to either an ending where they realize this and they make up for that, or they they become, the story ends tragically. And that can also, when creating a character, say the character is a narcissist,
mm,
it can be very difficult when the character announces they are a narcissist because story-wise, narrative-wise, you have to change them. And narcissism in reality is something that you can't really change. So it can be really difficult when a character announces they are a narcissist because then narrative wise you set up why this is bad, and then it has to have some kind of payoff. But if a character never announces it, then they can continue to be a narcissist. Is narrative and storytelling can be very difficult that way because with storytelling there are so many devices that you need to follow to have this coherent story. There's Chekhov's gun, there's Joseph Campbell, uh, his hero's journey. What we're doing with Roach Motel, we are following a whole other kind of device. This was heavily influenced by the theater. It was heavily influenced by the theater of the absurd. And if you know anything about the theater of the absurd, it is extremely difficult to adapt into film because the theater of the absurd does not rely on narrative as much. It relies more on character. So there are a lot of things in the theater of the absurd that does not make sense. If you have seen Waiting for Godot or No Exit or Iceman Cometh or The Rhinoceros or The Maid, a lot of it doesn't make sense, and that kind of makes it hard to fit or to craft a narrative around something such as that. It can make it very difficult. But yeah, so that's what we've been working on, is crafting a narrative around something that doesn't have a narrative. We want to create something that explores character rather than the world.
And I believe that we began, like when you talk about the theater of the absurd, that's when we start dealing with authentic characters because we ourselves do a lot of hypocritical things. Do a lot of things that don't make sense. But yet when we watch movies or we interact with other people, we want it to be predictable. We want to be able to
Exactly.
box it into a category so that we can understand it. But yet if we were to analyze ourselves, our own thoughts, our own behaviors, and how we think, and how we do the things that we do, we would see that it is kind of absurd. But we do switch from one thing to the next. That the same person who says, "Oh, smoking's bad for you. Never, ever, ever smoke," and then has a cigar in their hand, and you say, "Oh, I thought you said smoking was bad." Oh, it doesn't count as a cigar.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's
Exactly.
like, but it does count. You're still smoking, or it doesn't count. It's a hookah. It doesn't count. So that's part of our humanness. And for those of us who really get what it means to be human and the oxymoron of it, you're able to understand the theater of the absurdness. So I like that you brought that up. I love the fact of being that you talked about developed and stagnant characters and then brought up the underdeveloped character, because we don't deal with that enough. And even talking about, you said so many great throughout this whole live, just great things, but you spoke about that the world taught them to be like this, and yet now the world continues to change, and they're kind of stuck where they're at. And it makes me think about the factor being how people's mindsets are now, and how I think 2020 was really when people got a chance to observe on a different note how people's mindsets are, because everything kind of stopped, right? The world around us, this was closed, this was this was shut down. They only wanted the essential workers, so we had more time to kind of sit down and see how people's mindsets were. And we got a chance to see, like, okay, this person, this group of people are still kind of trapped in the 40s. This one's kind of trapped in the 50s. And although the world around them is changing, they're still shaped by what they grew in.
Right.
So I like this aspect that you're bringing to the plate with your movie, with the Roach Motel. Now, when does Roach Motel come out?
So we are planning on releasing it around winter of 2022. And going back, we are filming right now, but we're planning on winter of 2022. And going back to the theater of the absurd and how it plays into Roach Motel, I would say that's the biggest tease that I could give of Roach Motel. It is about characters searching for meaning in a chaotic and random universe where there is none.
Man, isn't that what we're doing, though?
Yeah.
In real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Characters searching for meaning in a chaotic world. I believe that's where we're at with so many different things. Constantly searching for meaning in life, in ourselves, in whatever occupation that you're in, and whatever role that you fit in, whatever title that you're in. You're constantly searching for meaning, and yet the world outside of you is so chaotic. And it doesn't have to be just out there. The world inside your house can be kind of chaotic, and you're still trying to find out, who am I? What's my purpose? What's my meaning? So I am looking forward to it. And I do have one more question.
Okay.
How does it feel to act in your own movie?
Yeah. So the thing about that is, I prefer not to. And the thing is, it's very difficult to frame and block, which is very important when directing, when you star in your own movie. So I am having to wear two different hats. From the very beginning, we decided it would probably be best if I were to act in it. For promotional stuff, we need someone behind the camera to jump in front of the camera when promoting the film. Another thing is, the character in general is described in the script as a starving coyote type. He is a very deranged kind of character. He is this play on the 1950s bad boy. He's the Marlon Brando, the James Dean. But he's also very deranged. And so I didn't want to put that on someone to physically get into that role. So there were a lot of factors that played into it. And so when getting into the role, the first thing that I wanted to do was figure out, how does this character walk and how does this character talk? Another big thing, another big reason why I didn't really want to jump into the role is because I didn't really want to know what this character thinks. I wanted him to be very much a wild card. But, you know, I play into that a lot within this film. You know, when getting into how the character walks and talks, how a character sounds is very important to me. So what I did was I thought a lot about, you know, a lot of voices at that time. I was thinking about that transient, that Cary Grant accent, where he speaks very fast and he's, you know, very proper. But I thought that was too proper for the character. So then I thought about a big influence was that Marlon Brando, and the Marlon Brando kind of, he mumbles a little bit, but he talks very low pitch, and at the same time he doesn't really sound like he's getting all the words out. But that, you know, while it can be played for comedic purposes, it's not very intimidating when it needs to be. So then I thought about that. Jimmy Durante kind of speaks. He's got that low risk kind of like voice, you know. He's that Brooklyn kind of guy. So I took that and then I pitched it up a little bit to make him a little younger. Took away the gruffness of it. I mixed that with Joe Pesci and Bugs Bunny, and then that's where I got with the Wolfgang, was, you know, with that mix of Joe Pesci and that Bugs Bunny.
I like that. Oh, wow. So what I got from that was so many different things, but for our audience, one of the key things that I got was the importance of holding on to everything that you have been able to view and watch, just holding on to your experiences so that you can be able to create and develop a character or characters. So everyone that you had mentioned were really characters and people that you had watched on the big screen, even including Bugs Bunny, which we all love Bugs Bunny. I can't think, if you don't love Bugs Bunny, something's wrong with you. Bugs Bunny is like so lovable. Now, Tweety, I'm not really a Tweety fan. I'll admit, I'm not a Tweety fan. Tweety, yeah. But Bugs, everybody loves Bugs. So to be able to incorporate a fictionalized cartoon character into your character is so amazing to me, because you didn't let go of the experiences that you had. So it wasn't like I'm going to have to recreate someone out of thin air. Like, you grabbed hold of what's new and put it together. From that came a question that I do have. You said that as you were making the voice for this character, you took a little bit from here, a little bit from there. Did you already have an idea of what the character was like? Was it like solid foundational idea, or did you find yourself getting to know the character as you walk into him?
Yeah, so this, you know, it's heavily inspired by things like Badlands, Bonnie and Clyde. There's that Bonnie and Clyde type relationship to it. These two characters, Wolfgang and Priscilla. And there was an original short script that I had written way before Roach Motel that kind of gave me an idea of these characters. It had that exploitation aesthetic, and it kind of set up the base of who Wolfgang and Priscilla were. I think it was like Pussycat Strikes Back or something, and where it was going to be a short film, but then I kind of crafted that into Roach Motel, where that was originally going to be a short film, but then there was just so much added to that where I was just like, we could really do something with this. And the thing about Wolfgang and Priscilla is they were characters that were so much fun to write. And they have these breakaways where they get to talk and they get to explore their relationship. And it's so much fun to explore these characters that, you know, I had to often tell myself that it's time to get back to the plot. Because yeah, there were times where I just loved just exploring these characters, their relationships, and that you know that bond that they have, I think, is very important to the story. I loved exploring them, and I would absolutely explore them again if the time ever came. But yeah, they're just so much fun. It's as if they have this language that only they know, but we can understand. It's kind of like we have this familiarity with them. Yeah.
So do you see yourself possibly branching off and like making a script or writing a script that's just based off of them?
So I think about it often. I was telling my script advisor that he helps me get the philosophy and the psychology in a balanced way, where it's balanced between uh, both characters, both individuals, different philosophies. His name's Jeremy Jake Kwame Jackson. He I was talking to him about possibly branching off and giving them their own kind of
Treatment.
story. But yeah, I would only do it if I found the right philosophy for it, because that's something that I want to explore, is a certain philosophy that's different from Roach Motel. I don't want to just recreate Roach Motel. I want them to have their own kind of philosophy that they can explore in their own kind of project. So, yeah, I would absolutely be down to explore these two characters. They're wonderful characters, very charismatic and very fun to write. But if I do end up giving them their own kind of thing, it may not be for a while. I may take a bit of a break from them to explore something else. But yeah, I would love to explore them at some point if I find the right philosophy.
I totally dig where you're at with that, especially when you say not wanting to create a Roach Motel, Roach Motel number two, but is not
Yeah,
really categorized as a number two. Only because I feel that way about the Harley Quinn sequence. And I was like,
right.
how is this any different than what she just did with the Suicide Squad? And it wasn't anything against it. I just felt that the
Exactly.
treatment of it should have been a little bit different when we got to Birds of Prey. But that may have been my own personal opinion. But being able to really set, your character or characters into their own dimension and stratosphere is so important for us as the audience, so that we can recognize them as being separate from a franchise or separate from a movie, and we can relate to them personally. So I do understand
Yeah,
what you mean as far as making sure that when that time strikes, that they kind of have their own separate thing. We still recognize
yeah,
them from Miss Mattel, but we can relate to them separately.
yeah. I think, and if I do end up doing something like that, the events of Roach Motel wouldn't matter. This would kind of take place outside of those events. It's whether it happened or not, or whether it's going to happen or not, we don't really know, because I don't want the events of Roach Motel to affect that story. As far as I'm concerned, those events haven't happened. Or they won't happen. That these are characters, but they're not the same characters. These are sort of like different versions of these characters. They don't exist in that sort of timeline, because I want
Yes.
the events of Roach Motel to be that within itself. I want the story to to be whatever it is, and this side thing, what they're doing, that to be whatever it is.
Yes, yes. And I believe that one of the things that I noticed with, because I'm a Marvel fan, we have a Marvel household. I like DC, but I love Marvel. But one of the
Yeah,
things that I noticed was that when we talk about, having a particular franchise and a particular storyline, then creating these characters that have their own storyline, I believe Marvel did really well with that campaign with Wolverine, because you have Wolverine in different situations that he goes through, X-Men, but then they created this whole thing with his backstory and what happened before he got there. And it gets to the point where we don't even think about him being part of the X-Men as much as it is the trials and situations that Wolverine goes through to
right.
become who he is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want it to stand on its own. And I also, with Roach Motel, I want the events of that to be that itself. I don't want to I'm not interested in creating a sequel to Roach Motel, because I don't think, as to where what happens in that event, what happens next after the event takes place within that film, that doesn't matter to me, and I don't think it should matter. It's it all comes down to the question of what happens next. What happens at the end of Breaking Bad? What happens at the end of The Sopranos? I don't think it matters, and I don't think it should matter, because that isn't that's not what the story is about. And so the events of Roach Motel, that question of what happens next, I don't think it matters what happens next. I think we want an answer so bad that we are willing to ruin the ambiguity or the story itself just to get an answer. And I think a lot of that is just like, no, it doesn't matter. What happens at the end of Inception? Is it a dream or is it not? I think we get.
Why'd you bring it up? We have been debating this Inception thing for like ever, and like really trying to get.
Yeah.
And we're gonna close out, but you brought up Inception. That particular movie right there, it was definitely like, is it a dream? The totem was still spinning. Like literally, the end of that movie just like leaves you going to Google and trying to find out like, what did the director say? What is
Right.
that movie? It is, and I love psychological thrillers. Like I'm really into it. I love the movie Identity. It came out. Identity came out, I think, like in 2000, 1999, 2000, somewhere around that nature. Where you're just like, he was really the killer, and spoiler alert, it was the little boy that was in him, right? But I kind of feel like even with Inception, like, well, what was it? Was this really a dream? Was it not? And yet, like you're saying, it doesn't even matter, because right now for him, he's with his kids.
I think the thing is, the reason it doesn't matter is because he accepts his own reality. That it doesn't matter if it's a dream or not, because we're following this character's point of view, and we care about this character, so we should care about how he feels. And if you like this character, or if you don't like this character, but if you like this character, I think it's good to accept that reality with him, which is what I think the film's trying to say, is that whether it's a dream or not, it doesn't matter. He accepts his reality, and he's fine with that. And I think that's all we really need. I think sometimes we don't need the answers, and we just get too caught up in the answers. Sometimes it's just like, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I'm glad that you said that. That helps kind of give me some ease. I just said during a recent show, I think it was like on Tuesday, just how the series Sulphur Springs kind of left me hanging, and I wanted to know what happens next, and we didn't get renewed for season 2. I was like, what? The way it ended, it was such a cliffhanger. So I'll admit, I don't like cliffhangers. I want to know like what's exact. But you're right. You're very, very right. You're following, and I love how you put it. When you're following the character's point of view, we've really embraced that character. You know, and it is important. If you embrace the character, if you embrace that character, then you want what's best for them. And if they accept it, that this is where things are for me. I'm here, my father-in-law's here, and I'm talking about the movie Exception. My children are here, and that's really who we just kind of get to. We need to be okay with it. Same thing with Sulphur Spring. Okay, it ended on a cliffhanger. It's okay. Just leave it right there. And I do believe that we want so much to be able to know what happens next. But do we keep questioning what happens next until the characters are like 109 years old?
Right.
And we know like what happens next is going to probably end up being, you know, their demise or their death. Like, how long does it take for us to really, you know, get that point that it's okay to let your imagination, you know, make the conclusion?
I like to think of it this way. Whatever happens next after that, if there's an ambiguous ending, I think whatever happens next likely will not satisfy the people. There are going to be a lot of people who are disappointed. I think a good example of that is Breaking Bad, when people are asking what happens next. I think the answer to that will probably disappoint you, because what happens next is probably very depressing. And it's good to just have that moment of relief where it's like, okay, whatever happens next doesn't matter, because in this moment, this character is happy, and that's fine. Or whatever happens next just doesn't matter in general, because the story isn't following that specific narrative. The philosophy or the narrative itself isn't going to explore that, because it doesn't matter to the narrative. We have to just accept that that's all we're going to know. And I think that's important, not to get too caught up in the answers, because for this film, what happens next, I don't even know what happens next. And I don't really care to know. I think whatever happens next should be up to the audience's interpretation.
Well, I like that. Well, you guys have heard from Inkwell Fonza, and you have the movie, which is coming out, you said, in winter 2022. So we are going to be looking for it. It's Roach Motel. And I'm hoping we'll be able to have another conversation, because just being able to dialogue about character and storyline has been genuinely so satisfying, a lot of fun. I enjoy talking about storylines, so I do. I enjoy talking about movies. So I do hope that our schedules open up again for us to be able to conversate and talk on storyline development and character development as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rashida. It was wonderful talking to you again. I hope everything's well with the family and you all have a happy holiday.
It is, and happy holiday to you too. Happy Thanksgiving belated. You know, our tribe has now expanded. We're on number 10. So when I was over there, we ended up getting pregnant with the twins. So that was number 7 and 8. Wait, no, yes, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. Oh, that was 7, 9. That was 7, 9. I know, right? Yeah, right. It was 7, 9. So yeah, we're on number 10 right now. It's easy to lose count. You're just like. So yeah, that was the twins. But we definitely have missed you guys and want to send you our love. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. And I will be looking out for your movie. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Oh, absolutely. It was wonderful talking to you.
You too.
We'll do this again.
Most definitely. Most definitely. You have a good evening.
You do the same. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read your comments, but there were a lot of great comments that were given to you.
Oh,
I know you said you do have to go to work, so I want to make sure that we are doing this in a good time. Excellent, wonderful interview and very informative. This Patty Crawford from both perspectives. I'm so happy to be working with Lucio on the film. He is the best. Ah, that's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of great comments on here. I saw some people said that you need to teach, and I agree. I agree. Movie theology and movie history.
Yeah.
You need to. I'm going to sign up for it when you start, okay?
All right. Thank you so much.
I'm serious. Like I said, I've read your critiques and your reviews, and some of them were so profound. I was like, wow, like, why doesn't he have this on a greater scale? So definitely, we know that Equal Kwanzaa is going to be seen and known worldwide, and I'm very thankful to be able to have this first one.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much.
And congratulations on everything else coming. For real. I mean, I'm honest. I'm honest. I really am.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, and good luck with your page and everything like that. Wish you the best, and you have a good rest of your evening.
You too. I will talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.